This is Jonah Dempsey, your host of the Human Design Deconditioning Guide. I'm going to talk today about Gate 31, the voice of leadership. So, Gate 31 is in the throat, and its harmonic gate is Gate 7 in the G center. And together, they make this channel where if you have that channel, you're kind of associated with being a leader. It's associated with the cross of the alpha. So I just kind of wanted to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about what does it mean to be a leader? What goes into leadership? Well, first of all, when we're talking about Gate 31, we're talking about the collective leader. This is different from the concept of a tribal leader. The tribal leader would be Gate 45. And the tribal leader is kind of the strong man, or strong woman, or strong person. The tribal leader is the king, or it's the Don. It's the mafia Don. It's the kind of head of the cartel or the organization. That's what Gate 45 is. It's this tribal leader. And the tribal leader is all about distribution of resources and taxation of the people, and it's all about it's about material resources. And that's not the kind of leadership I'm talking about here. It's more like, I guess it's a kind of leadership, but it's not really leading, because the whole idea of leading is that you're taking people somewhere, right? Like, let's just look at what the word leader means. You lead a follower. You lead people. You say, come here. We're going to go there. This is what we're going to do. And so you lead them to certain places and certain activities. And that's not what Gate 45 does. Gate 45 is kind of like a king who looks over the land and who taxes the hunter, and the hunter pays the king a certain amount of money to have access to the land. Or, the 45 has some sort of tribal power. They're like royalty, things like that. But royalty is not necessarily leaders. Even in old times, the royalty were not necessarily the leaders, because the leaders might have been generals, or the leaders might have been those who consult, or from other classes, and so on. Okay, so the 31 is the leader, or the voice of the leader, I should say. It's harmonic. Gate 7 is the way of kind of putting on pressure on how to express that leadership. So 7 has the idea of what direction to go. 7's in the G center, so it's all about direction. But 7 can't express that direction. That's why I'm saying Gate 31 is the voice of leadership. But Gate 31 doesn't really know where to go. It needs 7 for that. But if you have that whole channel, you're basically designed to be a leader. Okay, so what is this collective leadership? It's collective leadership that's not tribal. What is that really? Well, it's part of collective circuitry, so we know that it's impersonal. We know that it's open to anyone. It's not in-group, out-group, right? It's open to the collective, to anyone and everyone. We also know that it's not going to be prejudiced or biased or taking sides. So again, it's very different from that 45, who's going to be very us versus them. This Gate 31 leadership is not about that at all. And we know that it's logical. It's part of the logical stream or sub-circuit. And so being part of the logical sub-circuit means that it's very dry, and it's concerned with formulas. It's concerned ultimately with making predictions, with using formulas to make predictions, and essentially with patterns. So this is a leadership that is concerned with transferring patterns. How do I transfer this pattern to you? That's what the voice is concerned with. How do I best communicate what the pattern is? How do I, it's basically, it's trying to express the pattern to make the prediction. So it's a voice of leadership that says, if we don't, start to produce more food, we're not going to have enough food for winter. Or, if we keep building ships, we're not going to have enough wood to build the homes that we need. Or if we don't cut down this much wood, we're not going to be able to make fires to stay warm. So it's looking for the pattern in terms of where things are going, using the pattern to predict the future. Now, this is what logic does. Logic is future-oriented. The other type of collective circuitry, abstract, is past-oriented. So for those of you not familiar with this distinction, there are two kinds of collective circuitry in human design. Meaning, if you have a collective channel, it's either going to be logical or it's going to be abstract. And there's logic and abstract gates. And the logic is going to be future-oriented, whereas the abstract is past-oriented. And if you think about it for a moment, it just makes sense. It's actually kind of obvious why that is. Just one moment here. There's quite a lot of traffic, and I'm trying to get across. It's a little bit nuts. I'm just trying to get to the middle here, but nobody's, okay, 1 second here. Just gonna get to the middle. Sweet. Okay, now I just stand in the middle for a minute. So logic is looking at the future, and if you just consider why that is, it's because logic is essentially looking at patterns, and patterns are things that repeat over time, therefore will repeat into the future. There's no real reason to look for patterns if you're only looking for patterns in the past, right? The patterns that we look for with logic are patterns that we are then using as predictive mechanisms to make a prediction that something's going to happen in the future. So we say, last year we used this much food, and we had that many people. Well, let's do the algebra, and let's create the formula. We write out the formula, then we plug in what our town's population is this year, and we estimate we're going to need this much food, right? So that's what logic does. Logic takes the formulas, and it tries to predict what's going to happen. Abstract, on the other hand, now this is a word people get a lot of confusion about. What does it mean for something to be abstract? It means that you have extracted meaning from a particular concrete experience. Or, to abstract is like it's not abstract if you have the particular concrete experience and it's represented in its entirety. But anytime you represent it in a partial way, which, by the way, all representations of past experience are partial, right? A reconstruction of a memory. It's like each time you look back at a particular memory, a particular experience that happened, you remember it. You re-access that memory. That particular action is an abstract process. It's a process of abstracting from that past experience something. And what you abstract from it's going to change depending where you are now and who you are now. Looking back on that same experience that's happened, it only happened once. But each time you look back on it, you get something else from it. This is why the abstract process is associated with memory, and it's also associated with emotion, because it's like the emotional juice you get from thinking back on something that happened. the pleasure you take in remembering it. But at a certain point, there will be nothing new you can abstract from it. You've gone back to that memory so many times that, at least for now, there's nothing else you can get from it. The only way you might be able to get something new from it is at a later point in time, after more things have happened. You're essentially then able to unlock the ability to access a different part of that memory. So the abstract process is concerned with the past, and it's basically concerned with revisiting a singular past experience that only occurred once. It's different from logic, right? Logic is like looking for patterns, things that happen again and again and again. The abstract is looking at the singularity of a life experience. It's going back and it's abstracting from that. When you hear abstract, think extract. It's extracting from that past experience. So what does this have to do with leadership? Well, this is all giving context because leadership is logical, right? There's no real abstract leadership. Think about, you have somebody who is trying to be a leader of the group, or maybe they've even been invited to be the leader, or they've been elected to be the leader. And they're an abstract person. They don't have any logical channels, right? And what they're saying is, well, I had an experience growing up. It's like George Washington and the cherry tree. That's abstract. Well, I had an experience growing up where I cut down the tree and they asked me, and I told them the truth. Because the meaning that I extract from that experience is that it's necessary to tell the truth. Well, that's not leadership, right? It can be very seductive. The abstract can be so seductive, but you're not being led anywhere. There's no pattern being transferred there. There can be an expression of knowledge, and it can help make sense, right? Because abstract is also called the sensing circuit, which on one level has to do with making sense of things. Making sense. You can have an abstract leader in some sense who goes, well, this is all very confusing, and what I've found is that if you look at it like this, here's what you see, and here's what it means. And that's an abstract thing, right? But that's still not leading. It's not really leading you anywhere. It's not really what we need in terms of leadership. So the true leaders are the 31-7s. The 31-7, that's the true leader, right? So, what does it mean then to be this logical leader? Well, first of all, it's a projected channel. So it has to be invited. You can have someone with the 31-7 who's bitter as hell because they see the pattern. They see where it's going. They see what needs to happen to be fixed, to fix it, to change course, and nobody recognizes them and nobody invites them to lead, right? So this 31-7 has to be invited. True leadership has to be welcomed, has to be invited, has to be elected. And then the other part of it, leadership is not implementation. It's not till you get to the 6th line of Gate 31 that you actually get to the application. And for those of you familiar with how the lines work, the 6th line is always leaving behind that hexagram. Leaving it behind and going on to the next thing. That's what it's about. So I guess what I'm saying is it's not until it's ready to leave behind the voice of leadership that it actually is concerned about application. So, Gate 31, what's it about? Transferring the pattern. If you have Gate 31, part of your role is to express the pattern. Now, if it's in an undefined throat, that's going to be part of your not self. If it's in a defined throat and you don't have Gate 7, then it's going to be a dormant attribute. A dormant attribute that only really works when it's been charged up with the direction from Gate 7. right? So maybe you know somebody who has gate 7, they know the right direction to go, and you're able to help express that and to transfer that pattern, and essentially to manifest that pattern. Because the throat is all about manifestation. All right, this has been Jonah Dempsey, your host of the Human Design Deconditioning Guide. Thank you for watching.